July 15th, 1942, somewhere over the Greenland ice cap. 6 brand-new P-38 Lightning fighters are flying in formation. Behind them, 2 B-17 bombers, 8 aircraft, 25 men. They're part of Operation Bolero, the massive effort to get American planes to Britain. The weather was supposed to be clear. It's not. A wall of white is closing in. Snow, ice, zero visibility. The flight leader radios his men. "We're going down. Find a place to land." They set down on the ice cap. All 8 aircraft, all 25 men survive the landing. They think they're lucky. They have no idea that their planes will still be there 80 years later, buried under 300 feet of ice. This is the story of the airbridge of death, the route that delivered thousands of aircraft from America to Britain, the route that killed more pilots than enemy fighters ever could. The planes are still out there, frozen in time, waiting. To understand why so many died, you need to understand the problem the Allies faced in 1942. Britain is fighting for survival. The Royal Air Force needs aircraft, thousands of them, fighters, bombers, transports, more than British factories can produce. America has the factories, California, Texas, New York. They're building planes faster than anyone thought possible. But there's a problem. The Atlantic Ocean. 3,000 miles of open water between the factories and the fight. How do you move thousands of aircraft across an ocean? Option 1, put them on ships. Disassemble the planes, crate them up, load them into cargo vessels. But ships are slow. 6 weeks to cross, and German U-boats are waiting. In 1942, U-boats sink over 1,000 Allied ships. Every crate that goes down is an aircraft that never fights. Option 2, fly them across. It sounds simple. It wasn't. Most aircraft in 1942 can't cross the Atlantic in one flight. The range isn't there. Even with extra fuel tanks, it's too far. So the military planners draw a line on a map. Not one long flight, several short ones. Presque Isle, Maine, that's where it starts. Brand new aircraft arrive from factories across America. From Maine, they fly to Goose Bay, Labrador, 600 miles. Then Goose Bay to Greenland, another 600. Greenland to Iceland, 800 miles over open ocean and ice. Iceland to Britain, final leg, 900 miles. On paper, it looks reasonable. No single leg is impossible. Challenging, but doable. On paper. Reality was different. Let me tell you about Greenland. The approach to Bluie West One is still talked about by pilots today. It's considered one of the most dangerous approaches ever regularly flown. You enter a fjord. Mountains rise 3,000 feet on both sides. The walls are so close you can count the rocks. There's exactly one way in and one way out. The same way. If you miss the runway, you don't circle around for another try. There's no room. You're going into the rock, into the water, or into the glacier at the end of the fjord. And that's on a clear day. Clear days in Greenland are rare. The weather changes without warning. Pilots would take off from Goose Bay under blue skies. 3 hours later, approaching Greenland, they'd find nothing but white. Fog, snow, ice crystals that blind you. Meteorology in 1942 was primitive. No satellites, no radar. Weather stations were scattered and unreliable. Pilots flew on hope as much as information. The ice cap creates its own weather. Cold air flows off the glacier, hits warmer coastal air, and explodes into turbulence. Downdrafts that can push a plane into the ground. Wind shear that tears wings off. Pilots called it the Greenland Monster. They weren't joking. Back to July 15th, 1942, the Lost Squadron. 6 P-38 Lightnings, 2 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 25 men. They've left Greenland, heading for Iceland. The P-38 is the most advanced American fighter of its time. Twin engines, twin booms, distinctive silhouette. These planes are desperately needed in North Africa. The flight leader is Lieutenant Brad McManus, experienced, confident. He's made difficult flights before. This one will be different. 90 minutes into the flight, the weather turns. The clouds drop. Visibility goes to 0. McManus tries to climb above it. The clouds go higher. He descends. The clouds go lower. He checks his fuel. They've burned too much fighting the weather. They can't make Iceland. They can't make it back to Greenland. They're trapped between 2 destinations with nothing below but ice. McManus makes the call. "We're going down. Find flat ice. Land." It's insane. No one has ever intentionally landed a P-38 on a glacier. The landing gear isn't designed for it. The ice could be soft, could be crevassed, could swallow them whole. But it's that or run out of fuel over the North Atlantic. McManus chooses the ice. One by one the planes come down. The first P-38 touches the ice, bounces, slides. The skis dig in. The plane slews sideways. It stops, intact. The pilot climbs out, shaking. 5 more fighters land. Then the B-17s, heavier, needing more room. Both bombers make it down without crashing. 8 aircraft, 25 men, all alive. They've done the impossible. Now they just have to survive. The rescue operation begins immediately. Back at Bluie West One, the base commander receives the news. 8 aircraft down somewhere on the ice cap. Approximate position, 60 degrees north, 42 west. In the middle of nowhere. For 3 days, search planes crisscross the ice. They see nothing. White on white on white. The stranded men have no flares, no markers, just 8 dark shapes on an endless sheet of white. The men on the ice are rationing food. They have emergency supplies, but not much. The temperature drops to -20 at night. They huddle in the bombers for warmth. On day 4, a search plane spots them. Dark specks. Movement. Now comes the hard part. Getting them out. A rescue team sets out from the coast. Dog sleds, men on foot. They're crossing a glacier that's actively trying to kill them. Crevasses hidden under snow. One wrong step and you're gone. Wind so strong you can't stand. Whiteout conditions where you can't see your own feet. It takes 11 days. But they make it. The rescue team reaches the aircraft. The men are cold, hungry, exhausted, but alive. All 25. The planes are a different story. They're too heavy to move, too stuck to fly out. The decision is made to leave them, mark the position, come back after the war. They never came back. The Greenland ice cap is alive. It moves. Fresh snow falls, compresses, becomes ice. The weight of centuries pushes down. The glacier flows slowly toward the sea, and it buries everything in its path. Within a year, the Lost Squadron has vanished. Snow covers the aircraft, then more snow, layer after layer, compressing, turning to ice. The planes sink deeper, year after year, decade after decade. By 1992, 50 years after the emergency landing, the Lost Squadron lies under 268 feet of ice, nearly the length of a football field, straight down. An expedition finally locates them using ground-penetrating radar. They drill cores. They send down cameras. The planes are there, crushed, twisted by the ice, but recognizable. Getting them out will take years and millions of dollars. One plane makes it. A P-38 Lightning, designated Glacier Girl, is excavated piece by piece. They melt shafts through the ice. They disassemble the aircraft underground. They haul it up in sections. After a decade of work and $2 million, Glacier Girl is rebuilt. In 2002, 60 years after its emergency landing, the plane flies again. The other 7 aircraft are still down there, still sinking. The ice doesn't give them back. The Lost Squadron is famous because everyone survived. Most airbridge deaths weren't like that. They happened one at a time, quietly. A name in a logbook, a telegram to a family. Let me tell you about some of them. November 19th, 1942. First Lieutenant Charles Holden, 24 years old, from Wisconsin. He's ferrying a P-40 Warhawk from Goose Bay to Greenland. The weather report says scattered clouds. The reality is a solid wall of white. Holden enters the Greenland fjord in near-zero visibility. He's following his instruments, trusting his training, but the instruments can't show him the mountain that's directly ahead. The wreck isn't found for 3 years. The fuselage is scattered across a quarter-mile of rock. February 7th, 1943. AB-17, carrying 12 men, approaches Bluie West One in heavy fog. The pilot, Captain James Morrison, radios that he's beginning his approach. That's the last anyone hears from him. Search planes go up as soon as the weather clears. They find nothing. No wreckage, no survivors, no bodies. 12 men simply vanish. The North Atlantic keeps its secrets. August 3rd, 1943. A formation of 8 P-47 Thunderbolts leaves Iceland for Britain. 40 minutes into the flight, the weather deteriorates. The formation leader orders a turn back to Iceland. 6 planes make it back. 2 don't. The pilots, Second Lieutenants Robert Byrne and Thomas Finch, are never found. They could be in the ocean. They could be on a glacier. Their families never get closure. These stories repeat hundreds of times. Different names, different dates. Same result. The official records list over 500 aircraft lost on the North Atlantic ferry route. Over 500. And that's just the ones they counted. Why did they keep flying? The pilots knew the risks. They saw friends disappear. They heard the stories. They knew every flight might be their last. But they understood something else, too. Every plane that reached Britain was a plane that could fight. Every bomber was one more aircraft to drop bombs on Germany. Every fighter was protection for those bombers. The 8th Air Force was losing aircraft faster than they could be replaced. Every mission over Germany cost planes. 30, 40, sometimes 50 bombers in a single raid. If the ferry pilots didn't deliver, the bomber crews couldn't fly. If the bomber crews couldn't fly, the war would last longer. More people would die. So they climbed into cockpits. They checked their instruments. They took off into whatever weather was waiting, not because they weren't afraid. They were terrified. Because the mission mattered more than the fear. The ferry operation evolved over time. In the early days, it was chaos. Pilots flew when they felt like it. Weather briefings were casual. Procedures were suggestions. The accident rate was catastrophic. Then the Air Transport Command took over. General Harold George, a hard-nosed organizer, imposed discipline. Weather minimums. If conditions were below a certain threshold, you didn't fly. period. Mandatory briefings. Every pilot learned the route, the hazards, the emergency procedures. No exceptions. Standardized equipment, survival gear, emergency radios, cold weather clothing that might actually keep you alive if you went down. The accident rate dropped. Not to zero, never to zero, but fewer men died. They developed technology too. Better radio beacons, improved instruments, de-icing equipment so wings didn't accumulate deadly ice. Each improvement saved lives. Each lesson learned was written in someone's blood. By 1944, the ferry route was running like clockwork. Planes lined up in Maine, flew to Labrador, flew to Greenland, flew to Iceland, flew to Britain. Thousands of aircraft. Delivered on schedule. The airbridge was working, but the ice still claimed its share. Let me tell you one more story. His name was Lieutenant Harry Smith, 23 years old, from a small town in Ohio. He'd never seen the ocean before joining the Army Air Forces. In February 1943, Smith was assigned to ferry a P-38 from Maine to Iceland. First transatlantic crossing. His squadron leader said it was routine. Nothing about the North Atlantic was routine. The briefing that morning was optimistic. Clouds over Greenland, but clearing. Moderate winds. Nothing unusual. Smith took off at 0600 with 3 other P-38s. Formation flying. Safety in numbers. For 2 hours, everything was perfect. Blue skies, calm air. The ocean below sparkled. Then the wall of white appeared. It swallowed them instantly. One moment Smith could see his wingmen, the next, nothing. Just grey. He tried to climb. The clouds went higher. He descended. The clouds followed. His compass started spinning. The magnetic anomalies near Greenland. Now he didn't know which direction he was flying. Smith flew for 3 more hours on instruments, watching his fuel gauge drop, listening to static on his radio, hoping for a break in the clouds. At 3 hours 40 minutes, his engines sputtered. Fuel exhaustion. He had seconds to decide. He pulled the canopy release, stood up, and jumped. His parachute opened. He floated down through the white, seeing nothing, feeling the cold wind. He hit the ice cap hard, rolled, came to a stop in deep snow. Smith was alive, but he was alone on the Greenland ice cap, hundreds of miles from any base. No supplies except what was in his pockets, a chocolate bar, a compass that didn't work, a pistol with 6 rounds, a small mirror for signalling. That was it. For 11 days, Harry Smith walked. He knew the coast was west, so he walked west, through snow, through ice, through temperatures that hit -40 at night. He ate snow for water. The chocolate bar was gone by day 2. He started eating his leather gloves. On day 5, he fell into a crevasse. The ice gave way, and he dropped 20 feet into darkness. He thought he was dead. But the crevasse was narrow. He wedged himself against the walls. Inch by inch, he climbed out. It took 4 hours. His hands were frostbitten now. His feet were worse. He couldn't feel his toes. He kept walking. On day 8, Smith saw something on the horizon, a dark shape. Too regular to be natural. He walked toward it. 3 more days, crawling by the end. It was an abandoned weather station, a tiny hut from a Danish expedition years before. Inside, canned food, a stove, blankets. He ate until he vomited, then ate more. On day 11, he heard an engine. A Coast Guard plane, searching for another downed aircraft, spotted smoke from the stove. They landed on skis. Harry Smith, 23 years old, walked out of that hut under his own power. He lost 4 toes to frostbite. He spent 6 months in hospitals. He never flew again. But he lived, against all odds. Not everyone was so lucky. For every Harry Smith who survived, there were others who fell into crevasses and never climbed out. Others who walked the wrong direction. Others who simply lay down in the snow and never got up. The ice cap kept them all. The survivors told their stories. The dead kept their silence. After the war, the ferry pilots went home, got jobs, raised families. Most never talked about what they'd done. When people asked about their service, they usually just said they flew in the war. Not glamorous, no dogfights, no bombing raids, just long, cold flights over empty ocean, wondering if the weather would kill them today. A few wrote memoirs. Their accounts are harrowing. One pilot described losing his wingman in a storm. 1 minute the plane was there, next, nothing. Just static. Another wrote about landing at Bluie West One in fog so thick he couldn't see the runway until his wheels touched it. He said his hands shook for an hour. A third watched a C-47 ahead of him hit a mountain. The fireball lit up the fog. Then darkness. He flew the rest of the route in silence. These men didn't consider themselves heroes. They were doing a job, a necessary job. Someone had to do it. By the end of the war, the ferry route had delivered nearly 9,000 aircraft to the European theatre. 9,000. Fighters, bombers, transports. The machines that made D-Day possible, that bombed German factories, that protected the bomber streams. Every single one of those planes flew across the North Atlantic. Every single one faced the weather, the ice, the fog, the Greenland monster. The cost? Over 500 aircraft lost, hundreds of men dead or missing. The benefit? Victory. Was it worth it? The generals thought so. The men in Britain who needed those planes thought so. The pilots who died probably would have agreed. They believed in what they were doing. They knew the risks. They flew anyway. What's left today? The wrecks are still out there, scattered across Greenland, at the bottom of fjords, buried in glaciers. The ice preserves everything. Cold enough to stop decay, dry enough to prevent rust. The planes look almost new, except for the crash damage. Occasionally, expeditions go looking for them. In 2004, a team found a B-17 near the coast. It had crashed in November 1942. The crew had survived the impact. They'd built a shelter from the wreckage, rationed their food, sent radio signals. No one heard them. They died one by one over weeks. Their bodies were still there in 2004. The expedition buried them properly, gave them peace 62 years later. Dozens of wrecks remain undiscovered. Families still wait for news, still want to know where their fathers and grandfathers ended up. The ice keeps its secrets, but sometimes it gives them back. The airbridge of death operated from 1941 to 1945. 4 years, thousands of flights, hundreds of deaths. It delivered the aircraft that made victory possible, and it cost the lives of men who never got to see that victory. The next time you fly across the Atlantic, remember them. Remember the young men in unpressurized cockpits with primitive instruments, flying through weather that wanted to kill them. Remember the ones who made it, and the ones who didn't. Glacier Girl still flies today, one P-38 rescued from the ice. The other 7 are still down there, sinking deeper every year. Monuments to the men who flew them, frozen in time, waiting. If you found this story meaningful, consider subscribing. There are more hidden stories of World War II waiting to be told. In our next video, the rat lines. How Nazi war criminals escaped Europe through secret networks and found refuge in the same Venezuela that had welcomed Jewish refugees. The ice never forgets. Neither should we. Now you know.